Hello YouTube, my name is Twitchy, and with the recent reveal of Lost World for Future Card Buddyfight, I finally felt motivated to finally getting around to making the card game YouTube content I've wanted to do for a long time. Now if you're in the Buddyfight community, I know, we're going to talk about Lost World. Now, I know people have got their pitchforks and their torches at the ready, but I kind of want to go over the cards today and perhaps calm people's rioting natures down a little bit. I'm not trying to call anyone out, but I feel like, well, the Lost World cards definitely seem exceptionally strong right now, that there's something we're missing, which I'll go over a little bit later, but I want to do a little bit of an analysis of everything we know so far for Lost World. So without further ado, let's get right into the Lost World flag itself. Now, the Buddyfight division at Bushiroad were definitely not lying when they said that this season's big bad flag was going to have a crazier effect than anything we've seen before. So, let's go into it. Its first effect is you cannot choose Lost World as your initial flag, and you may put up to 2 copies of this card in your deck in all flags and use it. So at first, when we got this card revealed, that only 2 claws wasn't there, we thought it was unlimited. Now, for consistency's sake, people were thinking of only running 2 anyway, but I think at 2, it's quite fine. It's got that Omnilord effect to use it in literally everything, which is very cool. Its second effect, you may use Lost World cards. This card gets all abilities of a flag that you chose for Lostnify. Lostnify being its final effect, and I feel like Lostnify is a bit of a weird... doesn't really roll off the tongue, doesn't sound very evil. I understand what they were going for, maybe the official translation will be a bit different. Possibly worse, because official translations sometimes detract, but anyway. At the end of your opponent's turn, choose your flag and you may pay 2 gauge. If you do, put this card from your hand on top of the chosen flag, remove all of your deck from the fight, shuffle a lost deck, and replace it. You may only use Lostnify once per fight. So yeah, this is quite like Dry in that it is includable in your deck, and it's an extra deck. People were theorizing that this was going to be the season that Buddyfight was going to get an extra deck, but I don't think many people guessed it would come in this form, where the Lost deck isn't just like an extra deck where you go into it to bring out big boss monsters like Striding in Cardfight Vanguard, or special summoning like in Yu-Gi-Oh! With all their links, fusions, and whatnot. No, this is a specific extra deck that is only available via this card, so far at least. Maybe other archetypes will get their own little extra decks, but we've yet to see anything else. Now, as you can see right up here, this Lost deck will contain exactly 30 cards. Maybe more, maybe less, but it seems like it's going to be locked to exactly 30 cards. And only Lost World cards. So, by its own, it's very interesting. It's got a lot of people deck brewing, theorizing what archetypes will be good, what will be bad. Will this make everything non-meta slightly more relevant because they can go into this? Will it make the very meta decks even more meta because they can also go into this? We just don't know because we don't have all of the cards, and it's not been released yet. But, speaking of the cards, let's start going into those. Now I'm going to say right now, if you thought Buddyfight's numbers were getting kind of bigger and badder as the seasons have gone on, Lost World is trying to push that envelope, and it is going to blow those numbers out of the water. Our first guy, Odious Allergan, of course he's from Lost World. And the attributes that, if I'm not mistaken, every Lost World card shares, at least on the monster side, is Lost Vader and Dimensional Dragon. Its stats are 10,000 power, 4 crit, 7,000 defense. When this card enters the field or is destroyed, destroy a card on your opponent's field with Penetrate. You notice how I didn't list off his size? Well, you see this corner where it's supposed to have a size? And there just isn't one? Yeah, none of them have size. Now, my theory is that we're going to get some set spell that's going to work like Dragon Throne for Dragon Ein. It'll probably have some resource cost put into play, potentially non-negatable, non-destructible, non-bounceable, and it will, I'm guessing, treat your Lost World monsters as size 0, so that whatever monsters you had left over from your deck playing up until the point where you went into Lost World will get to remain on the field, and you'll just be able to throw one of these guys down for free. And I think it's going to be the opposite of Chaos, where we're only going to have one Lost World monster on the field. Now, this is just a guess, this is just big speculation, but all of these guys' effects are so big and powerful and strong, it feels like maybe that's the kind of hidden counterpoint they're going for, is that, yes, they are big and strong, but you can only have one. Now, I could be completely wrong, we just don't know yet. Maybe the whole no size restriction thing is a unique mechanic to it being an extra deck card versus a main deck card. But we just don't know yet. But all in all, as a card, this guy's very strong. 4 crit penetrate, 10,000 power, hits almost every defense number in the game, except for things like Amaterasu or Asmodai Overturn. And being able to just on-call and float effect of destroying a thing is very strong. Next up, the first version of Buddy. Evil Rebellion Demonic Dragon Vanity Skull Destroyer. 30,000 power, 3 crit, 10k defense. If this card is on the field, your opponent cannot gain life. Very good, let's say, counter card versus Link Dragon Order. And there are some other archetypes, especially newer ones, that have life gain attached to a lot of their things. But I feel like this is very specifically good against Link Dragon Order. Second effect, this card on the field cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effect. So he's got Indestructibility, which I believe every version of him shares so far. And Dimension Gate Open. When this card attacks, put a card from your opponent's field into the drop zone, and he's got double attack. Now, thankfully, that put a card clause that is on this guy and Brawl Zeus has been ruled to not negate Soulguard, so it is not exactly kaiju-like, as people were calling it and comparing it to Yu-Gi-Oh!, and that it doesn't just completely screw over Plague's entire playstyle or Folktail's entire playstyle, and that Soulguard will still count as being a protection, but while this effect is still strong, is because it gets around other cards that have indestructibility or bounce protection. Because this isn't bounce, this isn't destruction, it just puts. So Soulguard still protects against it, but it gets around forms of protection. It is just a very strong card. Their first spell, Dimension Revive. Call a monster from your drop zone by paying its call cost, and for this turn, that monster gets crit +2. You can only cast it once per turn. So, if people know, there is a card called Monster Reborn in Yu-Gi-Oh! That only very recently came back off the banned list, only to be limited at 1. Because getting a free revive on stuff is very strong. Especially when you give it more crit so that it hurts more, and if you're using it archetypally, most Lost World monsters just don't have a call cost, so it is essentially just a free summon for big damage, and that's very good. Their first weapon, which makes me speculate I might want to combine this with a Godpunk deck, is Evil Rebellion Demonic Gun Lossless Buster. 10,000 power, 2 crit. When this attacks, your opponent chooses a card from their hand and discards it, and you draw a card. And it's got double attack. Yeah, that's Very good. Their next spell, Dimension Laser. Counter, destroy 2 cards on your opponent's field. It's not 2 monsters. It's not 2 spells. It's 2 cards. It's a counter. It's free. That is top quality removal, and you can't argue against that. Especially when it's free. Vanity Cell, another spell. Counter, choose and use one of the following 2. During an attack on your opponent's turn, nullify the attack. So it's got no downsides, no requirements, doesn't say you, like if you're being attacked, doesn't require no monster in the center. None of that's just negates an attack, which is very good. Or its second effect, for this turn, you cannot be dealt damage by impact effects. Now, slightly more niche, perhaps sideboardable, though we don't know if you can sideboard extra deck cards. We presume you probably can, but we don't have the ruling for it yet. But protection against impact is not bad. It's not really something we desperately need. Next up, Dimension Mirror. You may only cast this card during an attack on your opponent's turn, and if you do not have a monster on your center. So, at least this defense spell has a slight downside. Counter, nullify the attack and deal damage to your opponent equal to the critical of all monsters that attacked. Did I say it had a downside? Because that's a spell that can kill your opponent on their turn. And that's not their only one. So their second weapon, Evil Rebellion Demonic Cannon Lostless Mazer. 10,000 power, 5 crit, penetrate. So effectively, that is just Danger World's Wet Dream on an item, if I'm not mistaken. I still prefer this guy though. Dimension Absorb, another spell. You may only cast this card during an attack on your opponent's turn. Counter, nullify the attack, deal 2 damage to your opponent, and you gain 2 life. And if that wasn't bad enough, it can't be negated. Just in case people were running really old negate cards, nah, you can't negate that. You're just gonna die when you attack. And you can't stop it. Cool. Next up, another monster. Deogane's Aziz. 10,000 power, 2 crit, 10k defense. Call cost of pay 1 gauge. Hey look, they had to pay 1 gauge for something. Isn't that novel? When this card enters the field, nullify all abilities of a card on your opponent's field and destroy it. And he's got double attack. So not the craziest thing in the world, but he can potentially beat over big, heavy soul boss monsters that don't have any form of protection on themselves. Because you can just negate all of their effects, negate their Soulguard, and just pop them. Which is very strong. Next up, Arban Patwal. 20,000 power, 3 crit, 10k defense. Call cost. Put up the top 2 cards from your drop zone into this card's soul and pay 1 gauge. Move, double attack, Soulguard, counterattack. Now, Bushiroad every once in a while likes making guys like this. They're like, hey, instead of giving him any good effects, we're just gonna slap a bunch of keywords on it. And traditionally, that has gone absolutely nowhere, and those cards are pretty much just packed junk. But I can see more use with this guy, because he's at least got 10,000 defense, which is very hard to beat over, and when they finally do beat over it, he is gonna counterattack and kill whatever they had, so even if they have a bunch of things that restand, potentially you've killed one of those things, so it will then be even harder for them to get over his defense with another link attack. I still don't think he's going to see much play. He might be a good budget option. Another spell, Dimensional Drawing. A spell that has some people thinking Lost World with Legend World, or perhaps with Wild Dragons, would be some pretty nice tech. Draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards, and it's on a once per turn clause. Now, even with the downside of discarding 2 cards, being able to dig 3 cards deep for free is exceptionally strong in any card game. Now, think if you had this, you were playing Legend World and you had 2 A Will Doll in your hand. Yeah, that would be nice. Another spell, Dimension Lifestream. Choose and use one of the following 2. You may only cast Dimension Lifestream once per turn. You gain 10 life. For free. No downside. Or, your opponent's life becomes 10. Which is funny because that seems like it's just another specifically linked Dragon Order counter. There are some other archetypes, like previously mentioned Plague, that can gain a decent amount of life and get over their initial life threshold, or this could also potentially be good against Zwei if, for whatever reason, you haven't hit them before you go into the Lost World and draw this card. But it has some cute interaction with the impact that I'm going to discuss right now. Vanity Zero Blazer. You may only cast this card if there are 2 more Lost Vader on your field. Pay 3 gauge, deal 10. So some slight synergy, but impacts traditionally have either seen absolutely no play or are exceptionally good and see some play. This one is negatable, reducible, and revivable, which aren't effects that are run all the time, but I'm not exactly sure if that's going to see play. This next one, Death Destroy Blaster. You may only cast this card if your opponent has 5 life or less, and you just deal 5. So again, it's reducible, negatable, etc. But dealing 5 free? It's not bad. I'd maybe consider running it. Now, this is the other thing that makes me think Godpunk Lost World would be a little bit ridiculous. Dimension Jamming. Counter. Your opponent chooses 2 cards from their hand and discards them. You may only cast Dimension Jamming once per turn. Yeah, fishing 2 cards out of your opponent's hand is really nuts. Especially when it's during their turn or your turn. Now, the opponent gets to choose, but really, when you have to minus your hand 2 cards, there's not going to be a whole lot of easy options. Usually you can get away with ditching 1 no problem, but 2? Man, that is nuts. Their next monster, Nunal Kant Dauf. 50,000 power, 5 crit, and 10k defense. Penetrate. So just another big beater. It's fine enough. 5 crit is really big and something we've almost never seen printed on someone. It gets bigger. I wasn't lying. Wiza Fedova. 80,000 power, 8 crit, 8,000 defense. Call cost. Pay 1 gauge and put the top card of your deck into its soul. And he's got Soulguard. That boy has 8 crit. 8. At least they didn't give Penetrate to this guy. The next form of Skull Destroyer. Demonic Dragon released Vanity Skull Destroyer. He's got 30k power, 3 crit, and 10k defense. This card cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects. When this card attacks, destroy a card on your opponent's field or return it to hand, and double attack. So, kind of a straight downgrade of the other version. Now, this guy is Trial Deck, if I'm not mistaken, whereas the previously talked about version is a booster set card. So, obviously, it's this guy is going to be more of a budget option. He's still not bad. Next up, Ago Niagal Dehalabarum. Dehalabarum? These names are a little bit funky. 15,000 power, 3 crit, 7k defense. When this card is destroyed, you gain 3 life, and he's got Move and Penetrate. At least his art's good. I'm not really a big fan of his effects. It's kind of whatever. Now this is the guy that's also kind of making people go, okay, calm down, Lost World. Ayla Dursion. 15,000 power, 2 crit, 7k defense. When this card attacks, draw a card, and he's got triple attack. And that attack draw isn't on a once per turn clause. If they don't destroy or rest this guy, you're just going to draw 3. It doesn't even matter if you're hitting your opponent. If you're just gaining 3, that is a lot of plussing for free. And next up, our final Lost World card for the day. The third version of the Buddy, which is interesting that we've been shown 3 versions of the same guy so quick. Evil Rebellion Light, Vanity Skull Destroyer. 30,000 power, 2 crit, 10k defense. This card on the field cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects, so the same indestructibility. When this card attacks, destroy a monster on your opponent's field, and he's got triple attack. So a further kind of sequential downgrade from that put effect down to destroy or bounce to now only destroy, but he does have triple attack to make up for it. So potentially if your opponent doesn't have any protection on their guys, you can just swing at them 3 times and blow up presumably their entire board while doing it. So he's not bad at all. So all in all, what do I think about Lost World? I think currently we're seeing on the low end 50%, on the highest end 70% of the entire picture. I feel like Bushiroad really does not want to make another mistake. They don't want the Chaos and Thunder Empire meta to rise again. They don't want to have that hate, that like visceral contempt from their community again. So while Lost World has some exceptionally strong cards, I really feel like there's some downside somewhere that we've not been shown yet. Because they wouldn't make all of these cards as strong as they are and then let everyone go into them and say, okay, this is fine. Because honestly, being attacked 3 times and having my opponent like draw 6 cards on their turn, discard my entire hand, hit me for a whole bunch of crit with penetrate on everything, would just be really obnoxious if every deck could just do that quite easily. Now, there is one last card we need to go over. Dimensional Dragon, Ale Magia. So it's got that Dimensional Dragon tag, but it's not a Lost Fader. It's 7k power, 2 crit, 7k defense. Call cost to pay 1 gauge and put the top card of your deck into its soul. Act, you can choose a monster on your opponent's turn, and you may discard a card from this card's soul. If you do, destroy the chosen card. Not bad. If your flag is Lost World, this gains triple attack, and he's got Soulguard. So similar to Zwei, how they had several cards that either changed effects, or in some cases gained, based on if your flag was Zwei or Dry, it seemed like Ranma, the character that plays this deck, is going to be ditching his Crimson Fist deck in favor of yet another Dragon World archetype. So not only is Dragon World, of course, getting True Dragon Tribe and this Crimson Blood Division, but then they're also going to get this Dimensional Dragon archetype. Don't they have enough yet? So, that has been my first video. Now, I apologize if anything was rushed. I know, probably messed up some speech here and there, but I'm learning. It's the first time for everything. Hope you enjoyed my thoughts on Lost World. I'm actually looking very forward to playing this. I pretty much always make every season's big bad guy deck, because I just love evil aesthetics. And I'm really hoping it isn't just as blatantly overpowered as it seems to be, but we're just gonna have to wait and find out. Now, if you want to watch more content like this, well, consider dropping me a like or a subscription. I plan on doing plenty of more Buddyfight stuff, including weekly breakdowns of revealed cards, deck profiles, meta updates, stuff like that. I'm also going to do other card game content, such as Dragon Ball Super, Legend of the Five Rings, some Vanguard, some Yu-Gi-Oh!, and other things. Thank you for watching. See you next time.